Welcome to another episode of the Modern Hotelier. We're excited to release this episode with Alissa Partee from Restaurant Technologies. David, what were some of your favorite highlights this episode?
Well, for me, finally, somebody defined what a chief people officer is, which was great for me.
Yes.
And then on top of that, what was great about her is that she just saw hospitality in everything. So as she described her background, everything was hospitality to her.
Yeah, one of my favorite things was how they've incorporated so much flexibility into their workplace. I feel like we talk about that so much in hospitality, how companies need to be more flexible. They really incorporated those 3 to 4 day work weeks so their technicians and drivers could have longer weekends and also service those companies that might be a little further away. So win-win for employees and also their customers. Overall, great episode and excited for you guys to give it a listen.
Enjoy it. Welcome to the Modern Hotelier, the most engaged podcast in hospitality. I'm your host, David Millili.
I'm your co-host, Steve Carran.
And I'm the producer, John Boomhofer.
Steve, who do we have on the program today?
Yeah, David, today we have on Alissa Partee. Alissa is the Chief People Officer at Restaurant Technologies. Alissa has over 15 years of experience working in the HR space and has helped Restaurant Technologies win multiple Best Places to Work awards in the Minneapolis-St. Paul region. Restaurant Technologies helps food service operators make their kitchens safer, smarter, more efficient, and sustainable, serving more than 36,000 quick service and full service restaurant chains, independent restaurants, grocery delis, hotels, casinos, and convenience stores, universities, and hospitals nationwide. Welcome to the show, Alissa.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be on.
All right, guys. So we're going to get started. So we're going to go through a couple areas. We're going to go through a quick lightning round. We're going to get to know some things about your background, your career, and then we're going to dive into some industry topics. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right. So what was your first job?
My very first job was actually working for a resort that my family owned in northern Minnesota called Pamoosh Resort. So everything from cleaning cabins, cleaning boats and watercraft, making sure the beach was maintained, cleaning fish was like the worst part of my job, but had to do it. And like really learning from an early age, young, legally allowed to work,
Right.
Young age, what it meant to have a hospitable place for people to spend some time.
Wow. What's something that you wish you were better at?
God, there's so many things. How do I pick just one? Wish I was better at sticking with a hobby. I wish I would like find something I like really wanted to do all the time. I bounce around quite a bit. So finding a way to relax consistently.
Got it. All right. So what's a luxury you can't live without?
A heated blanket.
Okay. All right. What's a place you've never been to that you most want to go to?
I have never been to any part of Asia, and I would love to go. One day, I will.
All right. So if you had your own late night talk show, who would your first guest be?
It would actually probably be Oprah Winfrey.
Okay.
Good answer.
That's a good answer. Yeah. All right. This is the last one. So if you had a time machine and you could go into the future or into the past, which way are you going and what year are you going to?
I would go to, I don't know exactly what year it would be, but I would go to the year I would retire. So I would want to, I'm going to fast forward. Can I fast forward to that?
Yeah.
And not because I don't love what I do, but just to be able to like get there and experience that.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm looking forward to it, although I love what I do.
No, it makes sense.
And then you get to focus on your hobbies.
Yeah.
The ones that I don't have. Like,
Exactly. Well, now those are the hardest questions of the podcast. So now you can relax. Okay. Now we're just going to talk about, your personal details and your background.
Okay. So, that stuff I know. Okay.
Exactly. So you grew up in Pelican Rapids, Minnesota. Is that correct?
Yeah. I graduated from Pelican Rapids. I actually was born and raised in a small town called Embarrass, Minnesota.
Embarrass.
Like the emotion. I'm embarrassed to say that, but I'm not.
Right.
So it's next to Virginia, Minnesota. It's on the Iron Range part of Minnesota. My parents actually were working in the mine up there. That's
wow.
And then my dad decided to join seminary and he became a pastor when he was 40 years old. So then that kind of put us on a track of moving quite a bit. And we ended up landing in Pelican Rapids when I was a junior in high school. So we moved every year. I moved my first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade year, and my 10th grade year. So it was like move, settle, graduate, move again to college.
Oh my goodness. And you spent some time in Montana in there as well, kind of all throughout the Midwest, right?
Yep. Big Timber, Montana, near Minot, North Dakota. And then, Pelican Rapids, Detroit Lakes area of Minnesota.
So how did that moving around, ending up in northern Minnesota, how did that shape you into who you are today?
Couple things. I've reflected on this a lot. I get this question quite a bit. One thing that I think has helped is really engage quickly with new people. Like I just kind of had to figure it out at a really young age. Oh, there's a new class or a new church or a new community. It was like, okay, like it or not, you better find somebody who you can talk to and you better do it quick because it wasn't really an option to hang back and not engage. And so I think it's forced me to become more comfortable in new settings and in new situations and break the ice pretty quick.
So you went to University of Minnesota and then DePaul. You got your MBA in Finance and Human Resource Management. How did you get down that path?
This is a fun one too. I remember when I went, so backing up just a quick thing. In University of Minnesota, had an incredible undergraduate career, let's call it. Was extremely involved with campus-wide activities, joined a sorority, a lot of people have a love-hate relationship with sororities, but in my case, it was an incredible experience. And through that, applied for a scholarship to open up a chapter. By applying for the scholarship, you would agree to open up a new Kappa chapter somewhere in the country. And it happened to be the one they were looking for somebody to open in Chicago, actually at Loyola University. And applied for the scholarship, was accepted and granted the scholarship, and they would pay for my MBA school, which was a blessing because I didn't have it. I didn't have the money to do it. I would have probably waited to get my MBA, maybe work a couple of years and then go, but ended up being sprung into it quickly from this scholarship opportunity that presented itself. And so I moved to Chicago and I sat down with the counselors at DePaul and they said, what are you doing? I said, well, I've done internships in human resources and really like it, but I really am kind of more of a mathlete, like a little bit of a math nerd. So I said, I think I want to have a balance between corporate finance and human resource management. And I remember the counselor was like, yeah, you're crazy. Like nobody gets along in those two universes in corporate America. Human resources always looks at finance and thinks that they're penny pinchers. Finance always looks at human resources as a waste of money. Like it's kind of like, I was like, yeah, so I want to break that dynamic a little bit. And so I was getting this dual degree. And while I was there, I met an individual who owned his own consulting company, Don Dells. And I met him through a really kind of a happenstance chance that I met him. And he was like, I was working for a temp agency, just trying to make a little bit of money to kind of help with the cost of Chicago, let's call it. Chicago was a lot of fun. And so met him and he was like, I want you to be a part-time consultant for me. So I was like, okay, sounds good. So I've got the Loyola thing going on. I've got a full-time MBA program going on. I said, as long as you're flexible, I'll do it. And that actually was the perfect combination of finance, because he was an executive compensation consulting firm, and human resource management. So like I spent most of my time with him, like really getting into these organizations that were compelling and incentivizing their executives in a certain way to drive value. So it was like, if you didn't know the finance side of the business, you really wouldn't be able to walk the walk, talk the talk. And if you didn't know the people side of the business, you wouldn't know kind of what drives people to do certain things, good or bad, right? So the degree like solidified itself kind of in tandem with this first job opportunity when I was in Chicago. And, I always tell people in my own human capital teams, I've said, if you don't understand that side of the business, like you really are going to give bad advice. So I always start that, like understand what a company does and how they do it. But
that's awesome. So you kind of led into this. You were the president of Kappa Kappa Gamma while you were at Minnesota, right?
Yep.
Awesome. So what did you learn from being the president? in those early days, maybe in those college days, or even while you were starting that new chapter in Chicago, did you learn anything in those early days that helps you today?
A big one was around like time management and communication. When you're in a leadership position like that, and a lot of people like roll their eyes at sorority or fraternity leadership. And I said, actually, you know what? I think it's one of the hardest times to be a leader. You're among your peers. You all of a sudden get put into this position where you're trying to do good with the chapter. There's a lot of philanthropy involvement. There was a lot of social activities, of course, but balancing helping people manage time, whether they held another position in the chapter or making sure people had enough time for studies while having a social life and everything like that. And then having this being part of something bigger, right? The Kappa chapter at Minnesota is one of many chapters. And so you're part of something bigger. And it's how do you uphold the values of that organization? And how do you help women who were joining the organization grow and develop at a young age too? So a lot of different opportunities that I still kind of call on now in more senior leadership positions, in a wildly different setting than a college setting, but the opportunity to say, like, what are people's communication preferences? How do people want to hear information? How do people want to be given feedback? Because the one thing, if somebody was off the rails at Kappa in college, being able to tell them, like, hey, I need to have you get things back online, you're talking like a lot of emotion involved. And so some of that actually is still very the same. Like in my role today is like, we got to have a tough conversation. What I learned and how to do it then in a really tough situation has been something I brought with me kind of everywhere I've gone.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So now we're going to go into a little bit about your career, how you got to where you are today. So during college, you worked as an HR coordinator at a Crowne Plaza. What did you kind of learn in those early days about the hospitality world?
So that was an
And
interesting
HR world, I guess.
Yeah, both, right? Hospitality. So HR at Crowne Plaza, so part of obviously a much larger hotel chain, and it is a tough environment. So I give a lot of credit to individuals who are, first of all, in the hospitality industry. And I've got a big kind of mantra in life, and I'm going to take a divergent for a second, and I apologize for this, but I'm a big believer. I've said this before. Food brings people together. Okay. Food brings people together. And some of the oldest forms of hospitality, whether it's like go way, way back, people always needed a safe, comfortable place to stay. And they always looked for a meal. And people have celebrated things over food. So I'm a big proponent of the hospitality industry because it gives people two things that they need the most: food, water, and shelter kind of thing. So
Right.
it's really at our core to have an experience, whether it's in restaurants or in hotels, that meets people where they're at and gives them what they need. And you're entrusting others to take care of you. So it's at the core of our human nature to hopefully take care of others. So when I was at the Crowne Plaza, early days, young, like in my early 20s, right? I think I was probably 20 years old. I see how hard they work to provide a great experience to their guests, especially when they have choice all over the country and where to stay. So seeing just how hard, like even the cooks in the restaurant worked, or the bellmen, kind of standing out there in the weather, making sure people could quickly come in and easily go out, and the dedication that they had to their craft. It was kind of it's probably why I fell in love with being involved with the hospitality industry. Of course, I spent some time at Marvin Windows and Doors later in my career, but there was still a little bit of a hospitality component even in that. But the deep appreciation that is in me, kind of directing how I think about stuff, is the hardworking nature that goes into running a place where people need a safe place to stay.
That's great. And so you touched on it. So after your master's, you did some consulting, Buffalo Wild Wings, Marvin Windows and Doors, you just mentioned. Then you became chief people officer at Caribou Coffee. What's some advice you have for someone who's looking to kind of move up through the HR space?
A big part of my expectation and the mentorships that I if I have a chance to be a mentor to somebody, what I always say is get to know the business as well as anybody outside of HR knows it. So HR, I look at it as kind of an agnostic function within an organization. We don't exist to serve ourselves, right? Sales has a very unique mission, sell. Finance has a unique, their own unique, very mission of closing the books, making it accurate, helping forecast and plan and all that good stuff. But HR transcends like every function. We're helping bring people into the organization. And if you don't know, not only just like what a company does, I always ask people like, what do you do? And they'll say, this is what I do. I was like, what does your company do? And they'll say, this is what the company does. It's like, well, how does the company work? And then all of a sudden they're like, how do I answer that? Right. And for my, I guess I would say like, if I'm helping somebody kind of get to where I'm at now, that's where I start. I say, get to know how your company works, because then you're going to be looked at as more of a business advisor or a business partner who happens to do HR, which is a kind of a technical function in one way. But if you don't know how it works, you're not going to be able to help identify talent decisions that need to be made to make it work better. You're going to have a hard time creating programs that attract people into the organization, that once they get here and then get into the machine of how it works, they either like it or they don't like it. So I said, get to know the business so well that you are almost forgotten as an HR person, and that you're welcomed in so many more conversations as a business partner. Yeah, and I push that on kind of everybody who joins my team, and I hold myself to that standard. Like if I don't know how sales is working, I'll spend the time to do it. Nobody's going to give that to you. You have to seek out those opportunities to learn.
That is awesome advice. So in 2020, you came to Restaurant Technologies as their chief people officer. What made you choose to come to Restaurant Technologies?
There was a lot of things. I do want to share, like, I've never left an organization that I didn't love. I loved Buffalo Wild Wings. I loved Marvin. I loved Caribou and Einstein's. I loved kind of each of what they did independently. But there was a very compelling change for me to look at Restaurant Technologies. First of all, meeting the executive team, hardworking, very involved in the industry. They knew what their customers needed. And we had a very unique solution for an industry that I've seen on the inside, working with Buffalo Wild Wings, working at the hotel, working at Caribou, the need for it. So I'm like, wow, I really believe in what we do and how we do it. I believe in our solutions. And I was actually miffed when I came across, I didn't know who Restaurant Technologies was. I had to do my own research. I studied hard on it and was like, wow, this is an incredible solution for an industry that needs it. You've got restaurants that are struggling to attract workers. You have high chances of slips, trips, and falls related to tight restaurant space, tight back of house spaces. And I have a lot of good friends who are restaurant owners. And when I had the opportunity come up, I asked a couple of them, I said, hey, have you ever heard of Restaurant Technologies? And one of my really good friends owns Malone's Bar and Grill in Maple Grove, Minnesota, AJ Stevens. He goes, that company is incredible. They've saved, he goes, my team used to have burn marks up their arms. And now it's like push button technology to help us safely deliver like fresh cooking oil and get rid of our waste. He's like, brilliant. We love them. So I've got this raving fan. And then I've got this, I'm looking at this company, by the way, like 4 months post the bomb dropping on the restaurant industry from COVID. And I'm like, should I make the change right now because of that? But I've got a raving fan talking in one ear. I'm meeting the executive team, saw the depot, how we run it, and then this like deep love for the industry and wanting to help in a way that I think is a great solution. So it married up a lot of different things. And I was like, I got to give this thing a try. And I love it. I absolutely love what we do.
That's great. And so, there's been a lot of new C-level positions. So chief people officer is one that's most people aren't as familiar with as, CEO or COO or CFO. So tell us, what are your main responsibilities as the chief people officer?
So it's fun. Chief People Officer is a fun way to say like Chief Human Resources Officer. I think Chief Human Resources Officer is just a mouthful. So I go Chief of Peeps. Okay, that's an easy one.
Chief of Peeps.
So it's kind of a classic function. Like we've got everything from talent acquisition, so attracting people in. Talent enablement is a growing segment of the function, which is anything. We really look at it from like enabling the best in people. So it's development focused. There is a training element to it, but it's kind of beyond just traditional training. We've got total rewards, which is everything from why people work outside of wanting to work with people. Like it's your paycheck, it's your benefits, it's all of that good stuff. Nobody works for free. Well aware of that. So that's the total reward space. And then we have an HR business partner model as well, which we've got very capable talent partners who help our leaders make talent decisions, either like now there's something that's going right or wrong and I need to make a call on it, or planning for the future of who we need to bring in for growth or expansion of the business model. So just a really dynamic team. And like I said before, my expectation is that they understand how the business works so they can serve it the best as possible.
This episode is sponsored by Restaurant Technologies. Restaurant Technologies is the leader in automated commercial kitchen solutions. Their total oil management solution is an end-to-end automated oil management system that delivers, filters, monitors, and recycles cooking oil, leading to safer, more efficient, and more sustainable food service operations. Last year, Restaurant Technologies converted over 300 million pounds of used cooking oil into renewable fuel, creating a more sustainable business with its 45,000 customers nationwide. Control the kitchen chaos with Restaurant Technologies' total oil management and auto mist solutions. To learn more, visit rti-inc.com or call 888-779-5314 to get started.
So now that we understand a little bit more about your career, we're going to get into the industry thoughts a little bit and how Restaurant Technologies is kind of almost changing the game when it comes to worker satisfaction. So as I said in the beginning, you guys have won multiple awards for best place to work in Minneapolis, St. Paul area. And I have a feeling this next reason is one of the reasons why. You have incorporated a 3 or 4 day work week. And I think you can do 13-hour 3 days or 10-hour 4 days for your drivers and techs. And one thing I love about this is the hospitality industry is not as flexible. So how did you identify that this was a need? And then what went into the execution and how has it been received by the drivers and techs?
They made this change before I got here, but we really codified it since I've been here. Like it's something that we've actually recognized as a main reason for satisfaction with frontliners. So think about where our team members who service our customers come from. We've got drivers who obviously deliver the oil, pick up the used cooking oil. And then we have our technicians who install new customers, keep our systems up and running, and make sure that the customers have the right understanding of how the system works. They're coming typically from other like inline profession, right? You're a driver from a different company who either has a typical like 5-day work week, and technicians are usually very similar, 5-day work week, maybe even on weekends. And so we wanted to like, we identified this like niche that we could offer. We could say, hey, this actually works. So our drivers can run 313 routes or 410 routes to your point, and most of our technicians are running 410s. So they either have a 4-day weekend, sign me up, or a 3-day weekend, also sign me up. So that is like a differentiator for us. And I'm confident that if we ever pulled back on that and we walked back to a 5-8, traditional kind of 5-8, the line out my door would be longer than we've ever seen. It'd be like tickets to the Taylor Swift concert, right? They'd be like, no, absolutely not. So we've incorporated that, but it's not just for the benefit of our employees. There's actually a customer benefit as well. So a longer route, like a 313 route, allows us to get further from our depot to service more customers far away. Instead of just running an 8-hour drive, we can get further out and reach those customers who are a little bit more in a remote market, still pretty urban, but we can get up there where traditionally a customer or a company wouldn't be able to service them efficiently. And let alone people love the 3 or 4 day work the weekends like that. So a win-win that will continue to maintain. It's just been a real win for the team.
I love that. And I read a quote from a driver, like in other past jobs that he worked at, he had to work weekends and, was working these longer hours. But with you, just it has been such a game changer, not only for his life, but for his profession as well. So kudos to you all. That is phenomenal. And keep up the great work on that one.
Yeah, we love it. Absolutely love it. And the nice thing about our drivers and our technicians, there's kind of autonomy. We like the drivers are running single routes, right? There's not a partner in the truck with them. We can service this is a like mind-blowing fact for a lot of people. We're like, we can deliver oil whether you're open or not. And a lot of potential customers don't realize that. We're like, you don't need to be open for us to service you. They're like, what? Every other vendor we work with, we've got to be open or have a manager on duty who can take in the shipment or handle like the equipment repair guy comes in. Technicians are a little bit different because we have to get inside there, but our delivery system allows us to deliver 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So it's just the customers love that fact too. And those 13-hour routes or 10-hour routes allows us to get there kind of whenever we need to.
And another thing that you guys do, which I think is great, you empower and encourage employees to submit ideas that can make the workplace better. So are there any samples of that or some that stick out to you that, over the years?
We've got a couple different ones. There is a couple that were kind of most notable that we like are you see right away is we had a lot of people who we go through a lot of gloves. And so they wanted to have like on a 10-hour route, servicing anywhere between 8 and 10 customers likely. They're changing their gloves 30 to 40 times. Like they're hooking up hoses, taking off the hose, unhooking the hoses, taking off the gloves. Like, so they're like, we're going through more and more of these gloves. And so we said, like, doing our little perfectly in the world, is there a way that we can be a little bit more aligned with our values of sustainability? So we found a better vendor that had more compostable gloves, and it still works for the drivers. They don't feel the texture is good and makes them easy to work with. So that was one example. And that came from one of our team members saying like, there's a lot of waste that we have with this type of glove. Can we make a switch? So that's one. A lot of what we do in operations. So there's a function that we have called operations excellence. It's all about simplifying how they work. So it's easier to work as a team member at RT. And the numbers of ideas that when we're spending up time in the depots, it's like, hey, well, have you guys ever thought about this? It might keep us safer. It's if you just take a moment to listen and hear them out and take some notes and follow up with them, your frontliners know what could be better. And that's not just unique at RT. That's in literally every industry. I'm willing to bet the housekeepers know best about what would make the hotel room more accommodating. They see it because they're in it and they know what's going on. And so my advice as kind of an executive of a team, if there's other people in the industry, take a moment and ask the frontliners, like, what would you do differently? And we've got a lot of ways to funnel that information up to us, follow through on it, and let them know if you can or can't make the change and why.
That's awesome. And there's a difference between just hearing what your employees are saying or what they want and really encouraging them to go out and lead the initiative themselves. How have you seen empowering your employees has really helped Restaurant Technologies succeed?
Part of it is through greater employee retention. Like if they feel seen, heard, appreciated, and valued, they'll stay. And what we've noticed is if people stay with us, like if they kind of hit that 1, 2, or 3 year mark with us, they don't want to leave. We have incredible employee retention. And when we don't, there's some reasons why it doesn't work out. Like I always say, you're not going to bat 1,000, but in most cases, when people have been able to contribute, they stay. And when you're not running the playbook with a bunch of freshmen on the field, you tend to win more because you've got the seniors on the team, you got the juniors on the team, and they're out on the field and they're playing for you. And they have that institutional knowledge that they infuse into others, of course, but also they think about the business more holistically and give better advice for making it better. So because they've been here for a long time and we've got great employee retention, I'm so thankful for that. It allows us to kind of continually up our game. So there's there's a ton of different areas I see it, but most of it is, happy employees tend to stay, happy employees tend to contribute more.
Yeah, that's great. And so kind of along those lines, what are some steps or some hints or suggestions you can give to companies to help them improve the culture, to address all those things you just spoke about?
I think one of it is starting with intention about the employee experience. Like, you have to want it. You have to, as much as companies say we got to win, we got to grow, all of those those are valid pursuits. But it does take intention, just like you have to be intentional about selling new opportunities. You have to have intention behind the employee experience. And breaking it down, we have an employee experience, 5 different factors that lead to a great employee experience at RT, and we're constantly measuring ourselves against those. So the first one is, how was the onboarding experience? That's one factor of the experience. Okay, what can improve? So we're breaking something that's big, big, hairy goals of having a great experience. We're breaking it down into measurable, bite-sized pieces. Onboarding, total rewards, work design, change management. How do we help people through change? And then talent enablement is the last one. So if you try to solve it all at once in one big melting pot of culture change, you're not going to do it because there's not enough specific focus on certain things. And measure it. We have a pulse survey that we constantly calibrating with the team. Like, how do we do a change management? We suck at it? Okay, let us know so we can make a change. Do our total rewards benefit meet your needs and your family's needs? No? Okay, what would? So it's asking those questions and being willing to do something about it. And when you can't, employees are actually very understanding. They know we can't always increase wages up to $1 bazillion an hour. They're not asking for that. They want a healthy, livable wage and pathways to earn more. That's what they want. But they don't need unlimited PTO. They don't need unlimited pay. They want reasonable, well-balanced pay. And all you have to do is be really clear and transparent with them about that. But if they don't know what's going on, if they don't understand, they don't have clarity, they're going to invent something that's not real. So intentionality, communication, focus, pausing and listening to their feedback, doing something about it. And if you can't change it, tell them why. They want you to be real with them.
That's great advice.
That is awesome. So now we've been asking you questions this whole time. We put you on the hot seat earlier with the tougher questions, but now we're going to turn the tables a little bit. Is there any question you'd like to ask David and I?
Ooh, this is great. I would love to know, like, what do you hear from your listeners? Like, what do they say about the impact of your podcast? Like, what resonates most with them? Do you get feedback like that?
We do. I think one of the things that people really like about the podcast is kind of when our guests come on is how personable they are. And I think, we've come up with a good format that hopefully you're comfortable and having a good time on the podcast, but you've really given some awesome insight and you just seem relaxed and comfortable doing it. It's not like an interview where we put the mic in your face and it's high pressure or anything like that. But, you're an expert in your industry. You're one of the people that has led to your company being one of the top companies to work with in St. Paul, Minneapolis area. So, they like to hear what the best people in the industry are doing. And, you might not be working for hotels, but you're still helping people enjoy their work with flexible schedules, with just listening to your employees and things like that. So I think that's one of the things, like, you're an expert, and that's why people tune in to see what the best people in the industry are doing.
Sure. That makes sense.
Yeah. And I think, Steve touched on, one of the things that we're unique is we're really kind of one of the few podcasts in hospitality that does have a format. So when people listen, they know what they're getting. And it's also us about making, the guest the focal point of the podcast. And the whole idea behind this podcast is so that, whether it be, this is great, someone's learning about HR, people learn about technology, they learn about different, hotel companies and things of that nature. So I think what I like when people give us feedback is that they find that they've gained something from listening to it, and that it's educational to an extent. And so that's kind of been our secret sauce, where there are others. We won't name names, but it's more about them, and then them kind of like trying to be the star of the podcast, not the guest. And that's just not the way we do it. So
yeah, I love your avenue of getting information out. Like I keep saying, like, the industry is really resource challenged, right? Resource challenged in terms of time, in some cases also in terms of margin, or it's sometimes just in time getting stuff done because it's overwhelming to serve in some cases. And so you want to have a way for people to quickly, it's like, I've got 5 or 10 minutes, or I got a half hour on a walk or a drive to listen. If there's something that one person can benefit and apply to back into their company, it's like that's a great way to pay it forward in an industry that needs support. And also, so I love your format.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, we've been asking you questions this whole time. You're probably sick of getting asked questions by us. We're going to finish off the episode. Our producer, John, has been listening in this whole time, so he's going to ask you one more question before we get you out of here.
All right, I'm just going to preface this by saying I do have a backup question in case you don't want to, in case this one goes nowhere. But you said a couple of things the first thing you said made sense, and then you said the other thing, and I was like, wait, how does that work? So one, you said your first job was at a resort that your family owned, and then two, you said your dad went to seminary and maybe was then a pastor or whatever. And so I'm like, how does that work? That your family owned a resort, but your dad's also in the ministry. I'm just fascinated by this intersection here.
No, this is great. So my family, when I say my family owned a resort, my mom's sister and her husband own the resort. So family in the family, but not my parents. My parents had no problem shipping us off to have work either at the resort or my mom grew up on a farm, a dairy farm to be specific. And so we got to pick our poison a little bit. Do you want to go work at the resort or do you want to go work at the farm, but you can't stay here? And so trust me, I spent enough time on the farm. I'm actually deathly afraid of cows. So that was like one of the reasons why I couldn't spend a whole lot of time on the farm. It was incredibly anxiety ridden for me. Everybody else was like, they're just cows. They're dumber than you. I'm like, you don't know that? Like give me a break. So I spent a lot of time on the resort because of that. But I did help a lot on the farm too. So my parents, separate from that, my dad became a pastor.
Okay. Can I have one follow-up? So growing up in northern Midwest, and then your dad's also a pastor in ministry, how did that like impact how you viewed hospitality and also working at a resort? There's a lot of this stuff going on in your life. Like, how does that, like how you view just hospitality in general?
Hospitality at its core is taking care of people. It's like that. You can strip away a bunch of other noise when it comes to hospitality, but the basis is how do you take care of people? My dad, incredible minister. He was there for people kind of in their best of times and their worst of times in many cases. So when joyful moments like baptisms or births or weddings, he was there, but then also like the hardest times, which is funerals, loss of loved ones, really scary times. Like I remember 9/11, he held a prayer service because people just didn't know what was going on in the world and it was scary, right? So people seek out comfort. And I take that to heart. And actually, when I said earlier, like Marvin has a comfort element of working at Marvin, it was creating beautiful homes and like through windows and doors to make it a homey, cozy feel. Like there's an element in hospitality in almost any industry if you're creative enough to think about how you take care of people. But I guess, I don't know, it must be in my bones or my DNA to say, like, I've said this before, if I'm not helping here, kick me out. Like I'm here to help and serve truly in my leadership, in the industry. And if I'm not helping, get rid of me. And I learned that I think from an early on, like with whether it was at the resort or seeing like how my dad took care of people in their best and worst of times, just swirls all together, I guess. That's how I would describe it.
Very cool.
Well, that does it for another episode of the Modern Hotelier. This is where you get to plug away, let people know how they can get in touch with Restaurant Technologies, how they can connect with you. So, floor is yours.
All right. So, first of all, guys, thanks for having me. It's great to meet you through this format. But if anybody's interested in connecting with me, I think the easiest is LinkedIn. So find me. I always say it's Alissa Partee. My last name is two Gulf terms, Partee. And some people are like, oh, what's the Partee from RT? I'm like, yeah, see, it rolls right off your tongue. That's why I'm supposed to be at Restaurant Technologies. Alissa Partee from RT. So hit me up on LinkedIn, find me that way, send me a message. And then if I can't help you, I know who can. So if you're a customer or potential customer, anything of that order, if it's not me to help you, I know who can.
Well, that does it for another episode of The Modern Hotelier, the most engaged podcast in hospitality. If you're watching or listening, we thank you, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
You made it to the end of The Modern Hotelier. Thanks for listening. The Modern Hotelier is produced by Make More Media. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're listening on YouTube, or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you know a guest or sponsor that would be a good fit, feel free to email us at hello@themodernhotelier.com. If you'd like to get some Modern Hotelier merch, click the merch button on modernhotelier.com or click the link below. Thanks and have a great day.